Hi, everyone. Nicole Christina, back with my friend and colleague, Carrie Luderin, professional organizer, expert of all things aesthetic. And we're back with you. Happy Friday. We've been doing these decluttering Facebook Lives and having a lot of fun, getting super silly. I'll speak for myself, but we're bringing them to you because things are still pretty weird. It's Memorial Day weekend, and
I totally forgot that.
Did you really?
Pretty much, yeah.
The weather has the snow has stopped in Syracuse, so we're
It has
really
been
delighted.
beautiful,
It
yeah.
has been beautiful. So we thought it'd be really fun and appropriate and relevant to talk about decluttering the garage. And that's a big one. And we're not expecting you to go out and just, work on it for 12 hours, but we're going to do what we always do and give you some tips and tools to have some fun and to do some mini decluttering, because even though the weather's nice and it's Memorial Day, many people are still saying, for obvious reasons, that their mood's pretty blah. They need a little uplifting project, a little structure, a little distraction, some sense of control over their environment, and even a little bit of a feeling of accomplishment. We also want to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our web course, Too Much Stuff, and we'll get to that later. But first, we want to start with talking about this idea of small wins and mini decluttering, because maybe times we had more focus and energy and concentration, but many of my clients are saying they kind of feel like they're unmotivated, just have this general sense of malaise, and then occasionally feel like they're hyperactive. So it's a weird mix.
Very accurate to my experience as well.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
How consistent it is. These things are just so weird. We just can't. Many of us, I should say, can't find a rhythm. So we're just trying to offer something that'll help you feel a little better. What we know is feeling a little sense of control really does help feel just calmer. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for calm and a little bit of a mood uplift. So we're going to talk about the garage, but don't be afraid, because we don't have big expectations. We know that things are tough. So Carrie, could you start us off and talk a little bit about our garages?
Yes, I would love to. So the garage is, for those people who own a garage as part of their home, it can be a really big job. It can be on the same level as like the basement or the attic as far as storage space, which means it could be an overwhelming project depending on the state of your garage. But yeah, we want to talk today about just some small things you can think about when delving into there. And, this, you may or may not feel like really digging in and cleaning everything out of there at the moment. But even if you have a few tools to go in there and think about some of the stuff that's hiding away, I hope that will be helpful. So I want to start with a statistic, which I presented to Nicole earlier, and that is that 25% of Americans do not have room in their garage to park a car. And we both said that actually seems kind of low given our own experiences and the people that we know and stuff. And when I teach classes, I usually bring this up and I say, this is not a surprising statistic to me. And this is also a no judgment zone. If that is the case for you, you can't park your car in the garage. It is what it is. But if we can just think about that for a minute, for most of us, our car is our second biggest investment, right? Next to our home, usually. And so here we have this vehicle that costs, in some cases, like tens of thousands of dollars. And if you think about the stuff that's stored in your garage right now, and think about what it is
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
and what
I'm thinking of the mountains of plastic
give us
gardening
some
pots.
examples, Nicole, right? Think of the value of the things, the monetary value of the things that are in your garage. It's probably like a tiny fraction of what your car is worth, right? And so it's kind of crazy that we use that space to store, in many cases, what's really junk. And that we're, especially around here, we have very harsh winters here in the Syracuse area. And so parking a car in the garage really can extend its lifespan significantly in our climate. So again, this is not to pass any kind of judgment or anything. It's just a little food for thought to maybe reflect on. And if your garage is, inaccessible to your car, maybe this is the kind of thinking that could get you moving in the direction of that being a goal. And it doesn't have to happen this month or anything, but maybe moving towards that.
You know what I was thinking? You were saying that, it's important to protect your investment. But for us, many of us have to shovel our cars off. And it's a lot of snow and ice. So we're really making work for ourselves by not moving out, like whatever it is, the recycling, the mounds of stuff.
I'm a renter, and so I don't have a garage, and I have no choice but to scrape my car and brush the snow off in the wintertime. And it's just, if you add up every day you have to do that over the course of years, it's a significant amount of time and hassle. And we're luckily out of that season now, hopefully. But again, this is just a little food for thought for people in terms of maybe some longer term goal setting if your garage is a place that's filled with a lot of sort of low quality, low cost items.
Otherwise known as junk.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to be nice here. So that's just, I just wanted to start with that. I also think that the garage is a place where we end up storing a lot of things that I call our just in case items. So these are things that we maybe purchased at one time because we did have a specific use for it and we use them for that, but they have since not been used in a while. And we have hung on to them because of this thinking, I need that, I'm going to keep that just in case I need it for that purpose again, or just in case I do that thing again. So, some examples for this might be specific tools for like a very specific project, or hobby supplies, sporting goods, maybe a hobby that you used to do and you haven't done in years, but you think, well, I might get to that again. I might get back into that next year. So I'm going to keep that just in case I do. So the just in case is hard, I think, in general. In any place in our home, we tend to keep these just in case items, but I think the garage is where a lot of those things end up. And so this might be a good time to just pick up a few of those and ask yourself some questions about those.
I'm sorry, I'm smirking. I sort of feel like you're talking to me.
Oh, Nicole, this is not. Yeah. These are such common things. I hear from everyone. Yeah.
So my son used to be really into folding complex origami, and I have multiple hefty bags jam full of different origami creatures. And he is in his early 20s now. And I just hate to throw him away, but really there's no time during my day where I say, I wish I had a go of paper origami foldings. So it's that like, oh gosh, I hate to do it. And I moved to this new house 3 years ago, and we still have boxes we haven't unpacked, which makes you think, so how much are you missing those or remembering
3 years have gone by since
that's
any of those
lot.
have seen the light of day. Yeah. So I would encourage you, again, I hear this from everyone. This is not at all just you. But yeah, I would encourage you to maybe open up one of those boxes and take a peek and really keep in mind 3 years have gone by. Like I have gone through the entirety of all of the seasons 3 times now.
Mm-hmm.
And if that stuff hasn't been used, I would encourage you to just leave them closed. And when the donation places reopen, just take the box.
Yeah,
Because
that's good
you have
advice.
proven to yourself that nothing in there has been needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the origamis that I think is probably mixed in with some sentimental stuff about your son and
Mm-hmm.
all that. So that's tough. But if it's bags worth, that might be a good place to think about opening them up and selecting some of the more special ones and keeping those. And those could even be displayed somewhere. But yeah, probably the entirety of the collection. If your son isn't interested in it and you don't have a place or anything for them, maybe just paring them way down to a few meaningful ones. And then again, they serve their purpose. I feel like that's a hobby that really is about the act of doing more so than the end product. I mean, I guess it's both, but I think you get something out of the creation. And once the creation is done,
Yeah,
then you've kind of gotten what you needed out of the activity, right?
right. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So another way we can think about the just in case items, I think thinking in terms of the time frame, how long has it been since I have needed this? What is the likelihood? If you can be a little honest with yourself and ask yourself, what is really the likelihood that I am going to do this again? Or need this item again? Another thing I think is helpful, this is an idea that comes from these 2 guys. They call themselves the minimalists. And they have been around for quite a while. They actually have a great documentary on Netflix if anyone's looking for something interesting to watch. But they came up with this thing they call the 2020 rule. And I think this is helpful when we're talking about just in case items. So the 2020 rule is this. Ask yourself, does it cost less than $20 to replace this? And can I do that in less than 20 minutes? And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, then just get rid of the item. And the number 20 isn't so important here, but basically, is this a relatively inexpensive thing? And is it easy to replace?
I've used that before because I've heard you talk about it. And there have been very few times when I had to replace something that I threw away, and I thought this
Yeah.
totally works for me. I'll go out and buy 5-spice Chinese powder because I threw the old one away and I didn't realize I would need it again. But it really, I didn't feel regret or feel like, darn it, I should have saved that. I thought
Right.
this is what she's talking about. And sometimes you need it again. And it was like $1.99 and it was fine.
Right. I have gone so far as to look things up online if I'm debating about a specific item, like let's say like the spring form pan that you make a cheesecake in. Like I haven't made a cheesecake in 10 years. What is the likelihood I'm going to decide next to bake a cheesecake again? So in a case like that, I've done this with like baking items. I've looked it up on Amazon and you can replace it for what, $12? Worst case scenario is I have a huge desire to bake a cheesecake again, and I run to Target or whatever, and I get a new pan. Those 2 guys, the minimalists, they actually keep track of those things that they've had to repurchase.
Wow.
And they have talked about the tiny amount of money they have spent over the course of many, many years doing this. And so, yeah, I would encourage people to try that out. And another thing is, I think a lot of us know people that have a lot of duplicate items like these. And so think about, if you're really debating about something, ask yourself, do I know somebody that I could borrow this from? I mean, my mom has a spring form pan. Worst case scenario is she would let me borrow it if I wanted to bake something again. So, yeah. Or is there some way to access it? I know there are some local libraries have started keeping items like baking items and tools and things available for to
like community
sign them out. Yeah, the way you would with books. Now, at the present time, obviously libraries are closed, but as those things get opened up, you might look into the libraries in your area and see if any of them are offering that kind of service. And if so, that might be an area of your home. Maybe there's some things in your garage that are now available for rent or whatever, and you could maybe say goodbye to a few of them.
I think the other thing that's so important, and it's hard to articulate, but the idea of having open space is so valuable. And there's just such a loveliness to it. It's hard to find a word to say, going through my stuff is helpful in terms of organizing, seeing what I have, sorting it out. But the idea of being able to see everything and feel like you have some control over your stuff is very liberating. People feel a sense of freedom about it. It lifts their mood to say, wow, look at all of this space. It's worth something to actually see space. And I think I forget that sometimes, that it really enhances my life to go into my garage and say, all my gardening stuff is in this corner. I can find all the different size rakes that I want for
Right.
whatever, special jobs. And it's not only the saving time, it's not only being efficient, but there's just this like breath of fresh air, like, hey, here it is. Easy, simple. I just get it and it feels great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think we don't really value that. That's not something we're often using
Mhm.
as our goal, like, oh, we're going to have empty space and that's going to be great. I think there's this tendency to, when we have space, we try to fill it. I think that's
In this
the
culture,
cultural
yes,
thing. Yeah.
more stuff.
Our stuff, our time, our mind,
Mhm.
if we have a moment that's not filled with something, we're like, oh my God, let me grab my phone. I don't want to have to think about the stuff that's just floating around in my brain. So that's a real mind shift, I think, from coming from our culture. But yeah, I think when we start to do that, even in really small areas, like you say, just your gardening tools, or pick one little area and clear it out, get rid of the excess, the things that are not serving you, that you haven't used in years, and just try that as an experiment and see how it feels. And I know personally, it feels really good to have a little bit of breathing room around my things. And like you say, it makes life easier in terms of finding stuff and also being able to put things away easily. A lot of
Mhm.
times the reason why things get left out is because it's a hassle to return them to the place they should go, because our spaces are so jam-packed with stuff.
Mhm.
You got to take those 5 boxes out of the way again to put it away. If you could just pare down the total amount, it would be a lot easier to put things back where they belong.
There's this concept too. I've heard of about not having your stuff own you, and you being the master of your stuff, which is kind of a different way to think about it. But like, the stuff is working for you. And
Right.
if you go into your garage and you can't find anything, you are not the boss of that place.
That
To
is
kind of
very
quote it,
true.
like, you're not the boss of me, but it feels like you're working, or you're powerless, and your stuff is sort of running the show. And the idea of being more intentional, like, I'm going to choose this rake and this rake because sometimes I need a little rake when the shoots are very tender, but I don't need 3 monster rakes because I can't use them all at the same time. And,
Right, right.
I rarely have raking parties. So,
Or you
it's
have like
really
5
about
people
making
over.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's choosing your stuff and making sure it fits with you rather than being sort of drowning in a lot of.
I completely agree. I feel that our things should serve us. They should
Mhm.
serve a purpose in our life. They should
Mhm.
help to make our lives easier. Um, Rather than, like you say, are we acting as a servant to our things?
Mhm.
Is our stuff, has it gotten to the point where it's controlling us, where it's controlling our
Mhm.
decisions, where I hear from people like, oh, I'd love to move to a different place, but oh my God, the thought of packing up my house is overwhelming. And I think that's an important point to make. So definitely.
Yeah, how lovely it is to have that kind of clarity and in all kind of all levels.
Right. And it does take some reflection. Again, we're trying to give people some ideas for some small wins here, and we are digging into some bigger questions. But I think if we can maybe just give a few more practical ideas about the garage specifically, making use of vertical space in the garage, I think is really important, both to keep the space clear and open so that we can maybe get our car in there or whatever other things that we need to bring in. And there are a lot of really specific storage things that allow you to make use of that vertical space, things that can hold your gardening tools, that can hold sporting equipment, stuff like that, tools. So I did write a blog about this. I'll link to it below the video if people are interested in checking out a few specific items. But I think thinking about moving up on the walls is a good way to make full advantage of the storage space that you have in there. There are even some storage solutions now that attach to the ceiling. So for there are some things that almost serve as like a loft where you can put bins and things in them. So if you have open space, I know in certain garages there isn't a lot of additional ceiling space because of the doors, but if you do have a little bit bigger garage and you have some space, that might be a solution for off-season items, things that you don't need to access a lot. And Nicole, you pointed out there are bike racks that are attached to the ceiling. So in the off-season,
they're on a pole, like a pulley.
Right, that's really handy. So then in the off season, you can just get them up there, and you don't have to worry about them getting damaged and stuff down on the floor. And I think too, thinking about splitting up the garage, the garage generally doesn't have any real structure inside of it. But if you can think about creating zones for the different things that you're storing in there. So one space might be for all of the sporting equipment. Maybe there's a shelf or some things on the wall for all that. And then another space might be for all the lawn and gardening and, maybe the snow shovels and that kind of thing. And then you might have a different space where you keep all your tools, like, if you have a workbench or something like that. And just making it real easy in terms of big general categories so that when you do bring things out, you can get them at least in their grouping back to where they belong, even if it's not, it doesn't have to be a very complex organizing system in the garage, but I think just having some general zones, exactly. And then you can, have the storage that meets the needs of those items too. So if it's a lot of small things, maybe having shelves with some bins. For bigger things like sporting goods and stuff, it might be a wall hanging system, or I've seen even just some things where you can put I feel like in the garage there's a lot of weirdly shaped items that they don't stand up well on their own, like you're saying, the rakes and stuff like that. So hanging them on the wall, or even just something that they can all be contained within.
Like a barrel type thing.
Yeah, like
you're placing
a can type of, where you can put all of those oddly shaped items just so that they're kept together. Another thing to think about too is like hoses and the extension cords and stuff. Those can tend to get like really out of control. But there are again, that blog that I'll link to, there are some really nice heavy duty things that you can use to tie that stuff together. Basically, you roll it up and then it just keeps it in one space, and it's not like the garden hose flying around all over the garage. So, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about our course.
Okay, sure.
we do different things and we have different expertise. I'm a psychotherapist and Carrie is a designer and a professional organizer. So we come together and we kind of tackle the whole idea of clutter from two sides and two, I guess, points of view, and really trying to look at this idea that if it was so easy, we all would have really wonderful organized spaces all the time. I don't think it's as easy as just having three piles. And what we've seen and what we really addressed in the course is that it's easy to get overwhelmed. There are feelings attached to our stuff. It's not just stuff. And so one of the ways I've contributed is to talk about acknowledging that you may not be able to go a whole hour because you have to deal with some of the feelings that go along with moving through some of this clutter, and that's perfectly fine. And we put some tools in, pretty basic but very helpful tools about addressing feelings of like dread and overwhelm. Very practical and very doable. This isn't the kind of course I think that feels really burdensome. They're pretty short, and they're super practical, and I think they just get to what people are struggling with very directly. We've done it live before. People have been they've been very
Complimentary. Yeah.
yeah,
Got some good
I didn't know,
feedback.
like, how
Some
do
good
I say
feedback.
this? Yeah, we've had great feedback,
Yeah.
and it really has been life-changing. I mean, I know that sounds a little dramatic, but people have a real sense of freedom, and they reported back to us that they found some important things out about themselves, and they were able to move through some clutter and paralysis that really was holding them back.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of what we were talking about earlier about our things should serve us. One of the things that we do in the course is we ask you to reflect on what you want your life to be like right now, or what is it to, just take a little step back. We're always so busy doing things, but take a little step back and ask yourself, how am I really spending my time?
Mhm.
And or how do I want to be spending my time in my home? And is my home serving that purpose or those purposes?
Mhm.
And is my stuff serving those purposes? And using that as the framework for making some decisions. Because like you say, Nicole, it's not so easy as to just be like, oh, this goes in the donation pile. And
Right.
the difficulty comes in making that decision about what pile,
That's right.
right?
That's where people get stuck.
Right. And I think that some of that decision making, it really can be helped if you have some clarity about what you actually need in your life as far as stuff goes. And that requires you to, again, take that little step back. And I think our course gives people that opportunity. And it's not, I mean, you are a psychotherapist. This is not like a full counseling session or anything. It is, again, like you say, there are 4 video lessons with us, and each one is in the like 10-minute range, just to give people a sense of, so you're not watching like hours of content, but we really tried to boil it down to what are the essential things that could be helpful here. But we also include a printable workbook that gives you some space to do that reflection and to say, okay, how am I spending my time? What are some of the things I need for those activities that I want to be doing? And then using that information to inform the decision making about decluttering. Do I keep this?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Do I keep it or not? Well, what did I say I spend my time on? Does it fit into that? Or is this just something that's been hanging out in the garage for, a long time, and it's not really serving anybody?
And the idea is, I mean, this sounds really simple, but that we deserve to live in spaces that feel good. I know it sounds a little bit simplistic, but I
Yeah.
don't think many of us look at it that way. Like, what do I deserve? Do I deserve something that feels comfortable, that I feel like I have space? Or am I so used to tripping over clutter that I don't even think about it anymore? And I don't even like the annoyance and the irritation doesn't even register anymore because I'm just so used to it. I would challenge you to think twice about that. I have a pretty decent yarn habit. I'm a very avid knitter, and it's I love looking at the yarn that I purchased for projects coming up, but it doesn't need to be like hanging out all over everywhere, piles of yarn. And I think I sometimes I forget that because it seems like, oh, it's so pretty, it's so soft, I can't wait to make this. But right now I'm not making that. I'm making something
Right.
else. And
Right.
it just feels really good to have it organized in its little basket, waiting for its turn.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
and I feel like, especially in middle age, we really deserve to assess I got a lot of years left here. I've learned some lessons about myself. How do I want my life to look? And what's the stuff that gets to stay?
Yeah, right. What deserves its spot in our homes and
Mhm.
in our lives? I think that's
Mhm.
a nice way to put it. So, yeah, as far as hobby stuff goes, and this might be useful in the garage, like having some of that stuff out as inspiration, maybe like you're saying, you see it and you're like, oh yeah, and that gets you excited about it. That
Mhm.
can be okay, but I think giving ourselves some limits, like if I am going to keep some things visible, maybe I can limit them to this one little area, and rather than letting things get out of control. So
And it's not a perfect science. You'll go back and say, "Oh, I really went through my art stamps and I really weeded them out. There's still boxes left. I'm going to go back later and do a second." It really to me it seems like it's a work in progress. You may not be able to do this in one fell swoop. It might be take too much energy, too much concentration, and too much motivation. So we're really asking you to kind of chip away at it, get some benefit from it, feel better, and then, there's always tomorrow. You can go
right.
back.
And it is always a work in progress. And, bigger space like the garage can be overwhelming. But even if you
Mhm.
just take it section by section or box by box, and, okay, today I'm just going to open that one box and spend 15, 20 minutes
That's
seeing
right.
what's in there. And then you can say, hey, I started that big project. Sometimes we talk about this in a little more detail in the course too. Sometimes just making that shift from I need to get to that to I'm actually doing it
Uh-huh.
can really help us psychologically.
Mhm.
And all you need to do is make a really small start. And then suddenly you've gone from, oh God, I need to clean out the garage to
Mhm.
the garage project is now in progress, right? Even though I spent five
Yeah. I
minutes.
opened the door and put my foot in.
Yes.
I
Right.
I
A
always
small
marvel at
step.
the most small step. I always marvel at this because, you and I are both busy. We do things that we love to do and, we're active and engaged, but I still can't get over what a thrill it is to have a clean junk drawer or a clean I just decided to do the silverware drawer and pare down. I don't need one of those juicers front and center because I
Right.
don't use that very often, but I do use the can opener, and I will tell you I use the ice cream scoop on a regular basis. So that
How
deserves
about the wine opener?
right, there you
That
go.
needs to be easily
Right,
accessible
yeah,
these
right there,
days.
exactly, especially these days. So, like, I mean, I feel like, wow, I'm really having fun with this.
I
It's
know. Small things,
it is
it
really
really can.
small, and I'm like, "No crumbs, it's all laid out," and
Right,
it's just the gift that keeps giving because that was weeks ago and it still looks
right,
great.
but that's a space you need to use every day.
Right.
So if it makes you feel good, then that adds just every time you go to grab a spoon, you're like, "Yeah,
It really
I
is.
did that."
It's, still, uh sort of shocking to me how excited I
Right, right,
am when I see I have that
right.
clear space.
So, yeah, so I hope that folks will take some of these ideas and maybe just do something small for themselves this weekend and, get that little boost of, yeah, I accomplished
Look at me go.
something and I made my life a little bit easier and I feel good every time I look at it. So that's all that we're encouraging here.
Yeah.
So,
And next week we're gonna do something that's pretty much directed towards women, and that is we're going to look at handbags and
yes,
all
handbag
that comes along with
organizing.
that, and I use the plural because many of us have more than one. We're going to talk about, what we actually need and what
Mhm.
we have in there. I always think that buying one of those little makeup bags is a great idea, and I put stuff in there. I have
Mhm.
yet to apply makeup when I'm when I'm out there.
Yeah,
That's just not
right.
what I do.
Right. And
But
I find that too, we'll get into this next week, but
yep,
my handbag usage has changed pretty dramatically since the whole COVID shutdown.
that's
So we
right.
can
You're
talk
not
about
going
that
anywhere.
too.
Yep.
Right. Right.
So I
And
wanted to just make a last plug. Carrie has a new YouTube channel that
oh, yes.
has the other Facebook Lives that we've done. We've
Mhm.
covered different topics that might be really fun for you to take a look at. And my podcast, Zestful Aging, looks at all kinds of interesting stuff. Carrie was a guest, and there's some content around simplifying, but it really is a variety, and
Right.
it's about people leaving legacies and working on things that are contributing to
I would,
mankind in some way.
yeah, you have a lot of amazing guests. And I would definitely recommend the episode with Adam Minter that
Mhm.
is talking about what happens to our things after they are donated. It's fascinating. I learned so
Yeah,
many new things from that
thanks.
conversation. And
That was one of my favorites, and I
yeah,
asked Carrie, I said, "Was I squealing too much?" Because I was so
he's
delighted.
really, really a smart and
Yes.
interesting person. So if you're looking for a little more content around this
Mhm.
area of decluttering and simplifying, that's a really great one. So we'll link to all that stuff down below if you want to check out the other content that we have available. And other than
Mhm.
that, we will be back same time next week, 3 o'clock
Mhm.
on Friday, to talk about organizing your handbags.
Leave us comments, suggestions, where we read everything and we're really open to, talking and addressing things that you want to hear about. So we're
Yeah.
working for you. Let us know.
All right. Everybody
Thank
have a great day.
Yep. Bye bye.
Bye.